on the YouTube channel as always, probably within this afternoon. I am prompt and I work hard. So we're really happy to have Kim Loraine here from Audibly Addictive Project. I think it's project or podcast. She knows Sierra. Sierra got us in contact with Kim, and Kim is going to come and give a glorious presentation about audiobooks, why they're important, how to do them, things of that nature. She's got a bunch of information, and we have a lot more audiobook stuff coming up this year. So it's really nice to have Kim here kind of kick off the year of audiobooks. If anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to throw them into the chat, and then I'll go ahead and ask Kim that. And at the end, we'll have a little bit of a Q&A at the end, and we can ask questions and answer questions from that. But without further ado, Kim, you can feel free to take control of the screen, and you can share, and I'll go on mute, and we'll listen to you.
Okay.
You can also introduce yourself and everything. So.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Kim Loraine. I am good friends with Sierra Hill, and I am a contemporary and paranormal romance author. And I also own an audiobook production company called Audibly Addicted Productions. And we also have a podcast called Audibly Addicted. And so I put together a presentation for everybody. So I'm going to share my screen. And I have not done a slideshow since possibly high school, so bear with me.
No problem. I'll just jump in. Thank you, Linda, for turning off your webcam. No problem. So we just had a new attendee hop in. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Okay.
Nope, don't worry about
it. Okay.
Thank you.
You're fine. So I have put in just sort of some bullet points, and then I'll talk about things as we go, and then you can stop me if you have questions, but also at the end I'll answer any questions that I can that I have the answer to. Obviously there's a lot of stuff with audiobooks. It's a complicated animal. So let's see. Why should I make my audiobooks or my books available on audio is a question I get a lot as an author, but also as a producer. One of the things that's really important to remember is that people are listening to audiobooks now more than they ever have. I am a member of the Audio Publishers Association, the APA, and their report this year, from last year, has stated there's a 16% growth in sales, and that has been a consistent growth in sales. For the last 8 years, they've seen an upward trend. $1.2 billion in reported audiobook sales in 2019. They haven't released their 2020 information yet from their survey. And then for 3 years in a row, we've had more than 50% of consumers say that they're making time for audiobooks. The pandemic has only increased that. And I think that really comes from, one, people being so busy. We are all, everybody's busy all the time, and they still want to read, so they go to audiobooks. And also we're seeing that younger consumers are listening. So now we're seeing 50% of listeners say that they are under age 45, which means that you're seeing people who are eager for newer technology, and that's really, really interesting because those people are just going to continue to listen. And I get the question a lot about shorter books and whether shorter books sell or not. It used to be really consistent that people did not want to spend a credit on Audible or spend money on an audiobook if it was under about 6 hours. But now we have people who are asking for 1 to 3 hour long listens, and they're willing to pay that $5. Usually it's about $5 on Audible for a 3 hour listen. They're willing to just buy it instead of use a credit for it. And so that's a really positive trend, because I know a lot of people who really make a lot of their publishing decisions based on the length of book that they can put out, whether they want to put out a shorter novel or a novella or a novelette, and knowing that there is now a market for the audiobook version, it's a really good thing. It's very, very helpful. Let's see. So as I said, people are listening more than ever, but also audiobook listeners are different. They are a completely different audience. So you're going to find that there will be crossover. There will be people who love your ebooks and who will buy ebooks, but there are going to be people who haven't ever taken a chance on yours because they're exclusive listeners. I can't tell you the amount of people that I know who are exclusive to audio. Every time I have a new book release, I get the question when it's up for pre-order, is this coming out on audio? Because they want it and they want to listen, and they just won't do the ebook. So you're reaching a different audience. It's a totally different market. And also it makes it really accessible. There are people who are visually impaired who rely on audiobooks, and they'd much rather listen to a well-performed audiobook than listen to an AI version of an audiobook where you lose that nuance and you lose the performance. And then also, just like ebooks, once it is out there, it becomes a revenue stream. The great thing about an audio is that if it's available in ebook and then they can get the audio add-on, then your marketing for your ebook has already helped you market your audiobook. However, you do have to market audiobooks. They will not just sell themselves. So it is something to keep in mind that marketing is an important part of any release strategy for audio or ebook.
Kim, we had a couple questions. About how long is a 3-hour audiobook with respect to words? Is it about 30,000, 40,000 words? Is it less than that?
Approximately. Our rule is, and this is kind of like the standard, 9,300 words equals about one finished hour of audio. So a 30,000 word book would be a little bit over 3 hours.
Okay. And then Sierra had a question regarding audiobooks. Are you able to do pre-orders for audiobooks?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the past, ACX had made it very difficult to do pre-orders, and it was sort of this super secret thing that they didn't want to share with anybody, and you had to have a certain level of sales before they would allow you to have a pre-order. But now they will allow pre-orders. It's just a matter of timing. Audiobooks are expensive to make. This is something that is usually the thing that stops people from wanting to make them, and I don't blame them. It's expensive. I treat it as part of my release plan, so it is part of my budget to make sure that I always have an audio available on release day. But when you do a pre-order for your audiobook, first you have to contact ACX and you have to say to them, I would like a pre-order for this book. I want it to start on this day. You really need to contact them about 2 weeks before you plan to put the book up for quality check on Audible. And then your book has to be available for pre-order for 2 weeks before it can be on sale. So it really increases your lead time from having the book done to having the book come out. But I can tell you that it makes a big difference having that pre-order, because you can push it and push it and push it before your book releases. And as far as I have experienced, having a pre-order increases your rank when that book releases on audio. So it is seen in the Audible lists of new releases. And so all those sales help to count toward that. Any other questions?
No, not yet. Thank you.
Okay. So what does a producer do for you? A producer helps the author create the audiobook without the hassle of doing it yourself. I have done it myself. I have done it myself now 35 times. And I like doing it. That's why I started this company. If I didn't like doing it, I definitely wouldn't have this business. But the process, if any of you have produced your own audiobooks, you know that the process is long. You have to audition your narrator, you have to find the right ones, you have to proof all your audio, and you have to send them corrections and then proof it again and make sure that the product you're putting out there is a really good product. They have made it easier to change your book once it has released, if there was anything you needed to change, but it's still, you know, you want to put out a really good product. Listeners care about that. So what we do, and this is just based on my company and how we work in our business model, because every producer does do it different. We cast your talent for you. which means we will find the right narrator for your book. And when I say right narrator, I don't just mean the right voice. I mean things like someone who can do the right accents for your characters or side characters. Because let's say you have a book where you have an important side character who is Russian, but your narrator cannot do a Russian accent. That's important. That will make people return the book. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear a terrible accent. It will pull them out of it, or it'll get you bad reviews. But also age range of the character. That's really important as well, because if you have a super young character and you're casting someone who sounds like they are a grown adult, or you're casting a man with a super deep voice, it will be jarring. But also representation. So especially in the last couple of years, it's really become a topic that is a really important thing that we should all be discussing, and that is representation in voice acting. If you have a Black lead, you want to cast a Black narrator. And those are things that, a producer can help you with, because we know so many narrators and we're able to, to really find them for you and find you really talented people who also represent your character. We also handle union contracts. A lot of these actors are SAG-AFTRA union members. And so that is something that while you as a individual, you can set up to pay them through a paymaster, it's just one more step that you have to do. So we take care of that. We also handle making payment to everyone, and we do all the production. So we do the editing, the mastering, the proofing, and we will help you strategize your release. We don't do marketing for you because everybody else, everybody markets their books differently. And so we can advise and we can do advanced listener copies for our review team and offer those things for you, but we don't do actual like ads and marketing. So the next slide is all about the process.
There was
Go ahead.
a quick question regarding distribution. Diana, maybe you can come off mute and ask, what do you mean by distribution?
Well, I just mean, do you distribute the finished audiobook to ACX or Hoopla or the various places, or do you complete the book and then it's up to the author to push that out to their platforms of choice?
Right. So we do not actually distribute for you because we are not publishing it for you, and we are really just the person that, or the company that makes the book happen for you. You get to choose all of that yourself. It is a very personal decision about whether you're going to go wider, whether you're going to go exclusive with ACX, but we can help you through the process. I know there are a lot of people who don't want to even upload their stuff themselves, and we do help authors with that as well. Let's see. So this is just a little step-by-step guide of how the process works for us when you use us. So the first thing we do is you will give us a description of your book. And this isn't just like tell us your plot. This is tell us who the characters are. Tell us what you want, their voices to sound like. Tell us who we're representing, and whether it's say you write a thriller and you've set it in the UK. We need to know those sorts of things to help cast appropriately. So you give us that information, then we cast your book for you. We always ask for the author's approval of the narrator. We aren't just going to cast the book blindly and say, here's your narrator. Sometimes when you sell, like we are not, like I said, we're not a publisher, so we don't buy your rights. You own everything. You pay us to do the book, and then it is yours, and you keep all the royalties. So when you sell to a publisher, a lot of the time they don't give you the option of approving your narrator unless you put it in the contract ahead of time. So for anybody who does sell their rights to a publisher, please ensure that you get narrator approval before you sign your contract, because a narrator can make or break a book. And it's really important that you cast it correctly. But we do that for you. We help advise with casting. And then we write up contracts for you, between you and us. And then we write up contracts for the narrator or narrators between them and us. And that is set to protect everybody, to make sure that the narrators get paid, to make sure you get the product that you have asked for. And we think that's super important. You'll deliver your manuscript to us. You'll give us a character sheet, which is part of what we've talked about when you give us our description. Whether you're using a producer or not, make sure you always do a character sheet for your narrator. It's so helpful. It's just a write-up of like, these are my main characters. These are their ages. These are their accents. This is how you pronounce their name. These are their characteristics. And then include in that character sheet a pronunciation guide. I narrate as well under a pseudonym, and I do a lot of paranormal and fantasy. And one of the most difficult things is when I have fantasy words that don't exist in English and I don't have a pronunciation guide. But also things that you think are simple and easy. You might have a name, Cara. The narrator might say Kara, but you might want it to be Kara. Those are little things that you can include in your sheet to give to your narrator to ensure success and make sure that you don't have to go back and ask him to fix it. Because that can be really time consuming when there's like 60, corrections on a name. So after you deliver your script and your character sheet and your pronunciation guide, that's when recording begins. So the narrator has scheduled recording. We know when they're going to get us the files, and then they turn them in to us. Our editor edits the files, and then we proof your manuscript. We proof the audio against your manuscript. The editor will proof it as editing and write down any mistakes that she catches. But then we also have another set of ears listening after that to make sure we catch every mistake that we can. We do, as a rule, we let things go that don't change the meaning of the sentence because we think it's really important that the performance itself is, the integrity of the performance is honored. And I don't mean changing pronouns, and I don't mean changing tense. I mean into versus in, small things. We won't have them fix those. There are authors who like it word perfect, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's just the general rule that we have, is to try not to go back for the tiny things, only the big things, because we don't want to change the performance if at all possible. But we do get all the corrections from them, and we have our editor fix it. And then I listen again to make sure that it's correct. And then the final product is delivered after you make your payment. From there, you upload your book. And this is where distribution comes into play. So we can do it for you. We can't do it for you on Findaway Voices, but we can do it for you on ACX if you send us an offer as the producer. And then it publishes after that. So next is our distribution options that we have as authors. As I said, we are not a distributor. We don't handle that for you, but we can advise you, and I can tell you what my strategy is, and what a lot of my clients' strategies are. And I think that's, important. It's really important to discuss it and to talk about the pros and the cons for wide versus exclusive, and also some of the misconceptions. So I figure this will probably be where we have the most questions. So just stop me if you have questions. So the pros using ACX is you do get a 40% royalty when you're exclusive with them. If you are not exclusive with them, you only get a 25% royalty. That's a big difference, personally, to me, because I am an author who is exclusive until my books stop moving, and then I move them wide. And my sales wide have not been enough to warrant losing those royalties. So that can be frustrating, because when the lion's share of my sales come from ACX, come from Audible, it is frustrating to then see that I'm now getting 25% royalties on those while I'm not making it up wide. There are some authors who have a wide strategy and they go in wide from the very beginning and they swear by it. I just haven't personally seen it to be effective for me and for my audience, but it is different for everybody. When you're exclusive, you can have a pre-order and you can choose your release day. You cannot have this on Audible if you are not exclusive with them, and that is really important. For me, that was the deal breaker, and that was where I said I have to at least launch exclusive for the first 3 months. Oops.
Oh, we had a quick question
Okay.
regarding Audible Gate, and did that change your mind
hmm
at all on ACX?
No, but I will be happy to talk about it.
No problem.
Absolutely. So with Audible Gate is something that I've been watching very, very closely. And um, I think that what we're going to see, and this is possibly me just being really optimistic, but I think what we're going to see is a trend of people returning, doing their serial return thing that they do, which is an abuse of the policy and makes me very, very frustrated. I keep an eye on my returns on my dashboard. I can see when people are going through my series and returning it. But I'm also seeing in lots of audiobook fan forums, I'm not looking in the author groups because the author groups tend to be, people angry and people talking about how they're being, shafted, and I totally understand that, and I think it's very warranted. However, I want to see what's happening to the listeners. And these listeners who serial return are getting banned from returning. I have seen post after post. I'm not allowed to return anymore. Audible took away my privileges for returning because they say I return too much. So I think that we're going to start seeing this continued change toward stopping people from abusing it, because now that Audible has changed their policy as far as removing royalties from us, after, for that full year, now that we're seeing that they are only qualifying returns after before 7-day period of purchase is up, I think we're going to start to see a lot of change because now they are losing money versus us losing money. We're still losing money in those first 7 days, but while there are people who will go through and they will listen really quickly and get a whole series done and return it all, there are also people who hold on to these books they've purchased knowing they have a year, and then they return it when they are like, I'm not going to listen to it. Or I've listened to this whole thing, I'm not going to listen again, so I'm going to try and return it and get a credit, and it's been 6 months. Audible's going to start feeling that, and I think they already have. So that is my personal opinion. I am still exclusive with Audible because when it's all said and done, uh, they can return my books no matter what. I don't have control over that, but I do get more royalties when I'm with Audible exclusively, and I think that is still, for me, more important. And I also think watching it and pushing for more information on our returns and pushing for that return policy to continue to be tweaked is important. So that's my personal opinion on that. But if we have more questions about Audible Gate, we can absolutely talk about it.
No, that was the only one. I think your opinion is the correct one. They're just working through some of the kinks and scammers and
Mm-hmm.
people trying to take advantage of it. I mean, that goes back all the way to the beginning of Kindle and
Yeah.
KDP and all that stuff. So they're just going to iron that out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things where we're going to see it really continue to shift and change. And then there are probably going to be things that don't end up not working as well for us, because anytime, anytime a company that's paying us has to change their policies and they start making less money, then we start like making less money too. So it's a double-edged sword, personally. You also get promotional codes with ACX, and you cannot review on Audible unless you have purchased the book. So if you've sent out, so I do advanced listener copies, and our Audibly Addicted does that for our clients as well. We send them out via SoundCloud with a private link so that it is not downloadable. I really don't want people downloading my files so they can put them up on YouTube. It's super important to me that that advanced copies of my audio are not available to be pirated. And I know other people who use other things like Podbean or BookFunnel or Dropbox, but you can download all of those files, and then the person who has it can listen to it or upload it wherever they want. And I'm not interested in it. And that is, again, my personal opinion. So regardless of that, if I have somebody who's an early listener and I give them a promo code for ACX, then they can review it on Audible. If I don't have promo codes for ACX, they cannot review it on Audible. That is absolutely your personal choice. I do encourage all my reviewers to review on Amazon because they still can. It still counts as a review for your book. And I think that's even more beneficial than an Audible review because that helps with BookBub decisions as well when you have a bunch of reviews. So if you get 25 people listening to your audiobook and reviewing it, that's a big bonus on Amazon. So drive your audio reviewers to Amazon and make sure that they're putting up reviews there. Distribution is on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes when you are on ACX. So while we say it's exclusive, you are still on iTunes. And that's important to remember because that means you're not just available on Amazon. People who don't use Audible can still buy your audiobook on iTunes when you're with ACX. So I think that's an important thing to remember. My wide audience is primarily Amazon, iTunes, and Nook for my ebooks, but still my audio, even when I have things that are wide, most of my sales come from Audible. I sold a series to Tantor, and my royalty statement just came through, and almost all of them were Audible. So it is also easy to find and hire a producer or narrator on ACX. You can audition them, you can put your book up, you can get submissions from people, you can do royalty share. I personally don't recommend a royalty share only because you are locked in with that narrator for 7 years. So if you end up not liking that audiobook because you're getting bad reviews or you had a really bad experience with the way they performed your book, you really can't do anything about it. You can't decide to have it redone. You can't pull it. They own half of that book at that point. So it's a nice way to do it without spending any money, but in the long run, you are still spending money because you're giving your royalties to that narrator. I personally always choose to just pay them per finished hour and have full ownership of the books. So as of this presentation, Audible is still the biggest player in the audio game. They still make up for the majority of audiobook sales, which is why it's another pro to be using them exclusively because you get more royalties. There are definite cons to using ACX. Must be exclusive for a pre-order. That is a con because you have to be exclusive. You're locked into that exclusivity. Their exclusivity has changed. It used to be a really long, like they said it was 6 years, but they would let you out after 1. Now it's 90 days. So you can request to be removed from exclusivity after your 90 days, which gives you that chance to have that strategy of, I'm going to release my audiobook wide, or I'm going to release it exclusive. I'm going to get the most out of my first 3 months on Audible, and then I'm going to bring it out of exclusivity and put it up everywhere else. You can do that. Absolutely. So that is a benefit now, being able to do that. You can't get a chirp deal as it stands right now unless you are on chirp. So I just had a chirp deal and I haven't seen very strong results from the chirp deal, but I need to do more data mining on that before I can really give you a strong opinion one way or the other. And then, of course, we have our returns policy issue, which is that Audible gate. But again, as we already said, I think that is going to continue to evolve and change, and I think it's going to get better. And as I said, as of the presentation, Audible has changed their returns policy, and many of those issues are being addressed. So find a way voices. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, we had a quick question regarding promotional pricing and sales using ACX. Are you able to reduce the price after a certain period of time?
You are not. No, okay. You will not be able to reduce the price. I'm actually meant to put that on my slide for my cons. You cannot choose your own price for ACX. However, I just want to caution, and again, this is all personal opinion and just from my experience. We saw a significant issue with devaluing our ebooks. when 99 cents was sort of the only way we could sell ebooks, because there were so many people dropping their prices. The cost of producing an audiobook is high, and by being able to drop your prices, what I'm very concerned about is seeing a trend of devaluing audiobooks enough that we won't be able to make the money back to earn out the cost of the audio. So I do caution against lowering your prices and doing big discounts frequently. The Chirp, like I said, that Chirp promotion that I did, it wasn't really a benefit as far as what I've seen so far. And there wasn't enough sell through to the rest of the books in my series to make it worth lowering the price of the book. So I think that, that's important. Why I love that we have control of our prices if we go wide, but I also am concerned about, again, that, devaluing it, because there's just so much more that goes into the audiobook in a different way. So, but with Findaway Voices, you can lower your price. You can set your price.
Okay, yeah, that was a quick question. They said, what type of prices do they choose for your book? Is it based on the length of the audio file?
Yeah, it's based on the length. So usually, like novellas, you'll see them around $5 or $6, I believe, and then they're priced once they're above, I think it's 4.5 hours. I'll have to double check. Then they price them at the higher rate so that a credit, using an audiobook credit instead, is going to be usually the choice people make. So they're around, like, I think it's between $12 to $15, and then I think it's over 10 hours, it goes up to 20 or like $19.99. So they set those prices based on that. And with Findaway Voices as well, they have a calculator that's, put in the length of your book, and then they'll tell you how much you should be charging. But it's really all kind of around that $13, $14 mark where most audiobooks are priced that are full length. So when you use Findaway Voices, that has distribution of 40 plus platforms. You're going to see Findaway Voices as the other most recommended place to publish an audiobook. And that's why I really only talk about these two, because those are the big ones. So 40 plus platforms you can set up with Authors Direct as well if you want to set up an account with them. You can put it in libraries, and libraries are the only place I find regular sales, like that for my audios. Libraries, Overdrive, and some Hoopla, but Overdrive has been the one that I get the most from. The other vendors I don't see sales from. And so you can set that all up, but the thing about royalties with Findaway Voices is they vary between 32% and 50% depending on your distribution partner. So it's all up to that distribution partner you're using as to which percentage you get of royalties. And there are so many that it's really hard to judge what you're getting paid on each platform. And also, you can distribute to ACX on Findaway Voices, but please don't do that, because you get very limited support from Findaway Voices if you have a problem with quality control at ACX. Whether you're wide or not, just always put your book up on ACX as well. Just make sure you choose non-exclusive, because otherwise it becomes really hard to get any support for any issue you might have with ACX. You can set your own price on Findaway Voices. You can set up your discounts. So if you wanted to have a sale, you absolutely could. It would be everywhere but Audible. You do get promotional codes, but again, it's just different. It's just, you offer it for a review. And again, they can't review on Audible with that promotional code. It has to be an ACX promotional code. You can set up your release day. Pre-order I put here, but I'm waiting for them to get back to me on this because I haven't set up a pre-order with them before. I do believe you can set up a pre-order, but the wait times for things to go live are not as long with Findaway as they are with ACX. So you can also just set it up and say, I'm ready for my book to come out right away. Cons, if you're non-exclusive, you're going to get that 25% royalty on ACX. And then also you have no support when you're dealing with ACX issues. I know people who have not been able to get their book up on Audible distributed exclusively through Findaway Voices. They've not been able to get it up because there were problems that weren't being fixed, and Findaway wasn't able to help them. I also personally had an issue with Findaway Voices as far as my audiobook I was trying to get up there is up on Audible, has passed all of ACX checks, but they keep kicking it back and they won't give me the information I need. They just have a little bit less communication as far as what I've experienced personally with them. But again, I don't use them nearly as much as other people do. So the last thing is just from some clients of ours talking about production. We work with some of the top Audible authors out there. Lauren Blakely has us as her casting department, and we work with her a lot. Melissa McClone is a local author as well. We really enjoy working with her. And we also work with Marie Force and Megan Quinn, and have really enjoyed working with them and on their books. But they also work very, very closely with Audible, and are able to, help with any issues that our clients have. We have those contacts at this point, so we can contact Audible and say, we need help with this because we're having, XYZ issue. And that's really nice. It's helpful. And we really are very lucky to be working with the authors that we work with. And so I figured I would just throw in some of those testimonials, but mostly, I'm just here to answer your questions too about audio. It can be really, really daunting if you haven't ever done it before. And so now it's just a Q&A. So feel free.
Well, Kim, thank you for your presentation. That was fantastic. There are a few questions. The first one comes from Diana again. So what's the general time frame when you receive, say, an 80,000 word novel and to the point where it's finished and maybe it's ready to go up on ACX?
We usually ask that you give us 4 to 6 weeks. And the reason we ask for that is because we go through the script and make sure that it's set up with your opening and closing credits, make sure we have everything for the narrator, and then we deliver it to the narrator. For a longer book, something that's going to be 9 to 10 hours, we always want to make sure that the narrator has time to prep the book. Narrators really, usually, not all of them, but usually they really go through a prep process where they read that book, they mark it for characters and things that they need to remember, and then it takes them anywhere from a few days to a full week to record. So once they have it recorded, then it takes us time to edit and then of course to proof. So we really ask for that minimum of 4 weeks to make sure that everything is going to be done completely and as perfect as we can get it for you. The other thing is that when we deliver your files, they're ready to go. So yeah, that I would always plan 4 weeks, and 6 weeks is even better if we can get it.
I'm going to ask you the dirty question of how much does it cost for a 60,000 word novel?
Well, it all depends on your narrator. So narrators set their own rates. We don't lowball them. We ask them what their rate is, and that's what we charge. So our fee for production, which includes all the proofing and the handling of contracts and booking and everything, is $100 a finished hour. Our editor charges $100 a finished hour. So whatever your narrator's rate plus $200 a finished hour gets you that fully produced book. You can absolutely do it for less money than what we charge. We're here, to facilitate the rest of the process for you and take it off your plate and save you all the time. Narrators who are union, the absolute minimum is $2.85 a finished hour, and that is union minimum to make sure that all their contributions are made for their health and their retirement benefits. Unless they have a special deal with a publisher who has a deal with the union. But as far as our union contract goes, $2.85 is that minimum. You can find narrators for less than that on ACX. The most important thing is if you don't use us, if you use just a narrator on ACX, you ensure that they are giving you fully edited files, because there's no use in getting files that are not edited and then you have to go find an editor. But also that if they're under the union minimum, if you're getting somebody who is at 150 a finished hour, do your due diligence, look them up on Audible, listen to samples, check the reviews to make sure that the quality is good, to make sure that people are enjoying this narrator. That's all super important stuff, because anybody you work with, you always want to check and make sure that you're getting a good product from them. I have hired narrators from ACX, absolutely, and I've been very lucky to have really good experiences, but there's always the horror stories that you hear. So that's kind of one of the reasons we started, was that I had an author friend who was like, will you please produce my audiobooks for me? And I was like, I don't produce audiobooks. And she said, yes, you do. You do all your own. Can you do mine? And that's how my company was born. And so, yeah, it's expensive though. I would budget for 60,000. Let me just get you a figure. I'm going to stop sharing my screen if that's okay.
We have two physicists in the chat. It worked out to be about $2,000 for 60.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Yeah. So, that's going to be at the minimum. There are some narrators who are at $350 a finished hour. There are some who are at $375, so it's really depends on who that narrator is that you've got. And it depends on the length of the book. But I do have a spreadsheet where I can figure out exactly how much it would, be approximately, I guess not exact, but yeah.
No, that was perfect. Thank you. I know it's always a tough question because everybody knows it's a little bit more pricey.
It is.
So there's a question from Sierra asking you regarding kind of what is the approach that you're seeing to market an audiobook? Is there any best practices? Kind of what's the commonalities maybe across all your big authors outside of having a 50,000 person newsletter and a huge following?
Oh, yeah.
What can Joe Schmo, what can Matt Bouza do to market his audiobook?
Well, so I can tell you that I am a little fish in a big pond. I don't have a huge newsletter. I don't have a huge Facebook group. My Facebook group is like 2,000 people, but I would say only 600 are active. But using the advanced listener copy to generate buzz for your book is gold. Using solid narrators who are very good at what they do. They don't have to be the biggest names. They have to be good at what they do. There's two big differences. That's really important. You want high quality narration. Listeners care. They absolutely care. If you throw out something that is somebody who recorded in their closet and it sounds like they're in a tin can, it might pass ACX quality checks. It's not going to pass the standards of the listeners. So that's super important. And if you're going to narrate yourself, make sure you have a really, really well isolated space and that you've got good equipment, because they'll hear it and they'll know that it's not good.
One of our members has built a recording studio, so she's going to give a talk a little bit later about that.
Oh, it's a whole experience. I ended up just buying a booth because of that very reason. I was like, I just need to isolate it properly and make sure it sounds good.
Is the booth free shipping from Amazon?
Nope. It wasn't. Definitely wasn't, and it was 2 days of putting it together, and it's real heavy. So like a 400-pound door.
There's a question regarding the storage of the files when you're done. Do you recommend people using like a cloud-based storage or something of that nature?
Yeah, so what I tend to do that because it'll store on ACX forever. I have books that are just on ACX and I can download them whenever I want to. Um, so that's a storage option, but I also like to have it because you never know if something's going to crash. So what I do is I actually zip the files and then I store them on just like a little thumb drive so I have them as well because it was expensive and I would like to have copies of it somewhere that I can access. So I think you should always have it backed up somewhere, whether it's on Dropbox, whether it's on a Google Drive, or it's on a thumb drive. I would definitely recommend holding on to your files. And if you have them on ACX, I have never in 6 years had a problem with downloading my files from ACX. But I also, like, if you do have them there and that's the only place you have them, you might want to download that and put it in a folder and zip it up and have it somewhere else as well.
Sierra has another question regarding scammers stealing your audiobooks and producing audiobooks if you haven't claimed them on ACX. Could you maybe talk about the dynamics of that and best practices?
Yes. Yeah, we have experienced that with 2 of our authors. And this is a relatively new thing that's starting to really happen a lot. As soon as your book is available for pre-order, go claim it on ACX, whether you're going to produce it or not. Claim it on ACX so that you have it there. People have been taking audio that they see is not produced yet, and then they produce it a lot of the time just with an AI, or they do a royalty share with a narrator who doesn't know that it's not them and that they're not getting the right author. And so then these people are, making money off of your book. One good thing is that it's very easy to have it removed. Like, it's a phone call and they take it down because once they verify that you are the account holder who also has a KDP account that has the same email address, they are like, well, clearly you're the owner. I'm hoping that they're going to change the way that they do claiming books and make it more like it is on Author Central, where you can, search for your book and make sure it's added to your Author Central. But I think it should be something that they fix because, I don't want anybody making money off of my intellectual property because I worked hard for that. And so they shouldn't be able to do it. So I would just be really diligent about doing that, going and claiming your books. And then also periodically check. If you have a book that's selling really well that isn't in audio yet, do a periodic check just to make sure that there's not an audiobook up there because you can have it taken down if there is. So it's really frustrating.
We have a question regarding marketing and genres. Have you seen anything that is specific in the audio production with respect to genre and marketing? Is there differences there? Or the readers or listeners expecting something different based on different genres? Other than having a really good narrator. Yeah, other than having a really good narrator and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that it and one of the things I was going to say about marketing is you're going to be your best marketing tool. So if you talk about how excited you are about your audiobooks, and your Twitter is a great place for audiobooks. Most people hate Twitter. Twitter is a great place for audiobooks. Narrators spend a lot of time there. People who love audiobooks tend to be very chatty there. One thing that is really great is that listeners usually aren't exclusive to a single genre. They will dabble and they will go out to different ones. Like I listen to romance a lot, but I also listen to thrillers all the time. So when somebody recommends a great thriller and I see it on Twitter, I want to listen to it. You can also share samples of your audio, and that works across the board for genres. Like that is not exclusive to the romance genre. It is something that people want because these listeners want to hear it because that's what they're orally, fixated people. They want to, take in their information in their ears. And so when you can share a really great sample, that's great. And also getting people who want to listen to early copies of your book, getting them to talk about it on social media is really, really wonderful. So you don't have to have the biggest newsletter. And I think genre-wise, especially like science fiction and thrillers and mysteries, as well as romance. Those three genres tend to be the ones where I see the most um, chatter about audiobooks on social media, especially on Twitter. So,
To piggyback on your earlier comment regarding getting, early copies to people, I have a couple questions on trends. Have you seen any trends with respect to delivering lower cost audiobooks, novellas? We're very common that we as authors give away some type of lead magnet. Have you been seeing authors giving away their novella audiobook, trying to upsell then to Audible, the continuation of the series? Or have you seen people using podcasts as a way to deliver that as well? Just kind of trends in delivering, lead magnets.
I haven't seen people successfully give away a full novella audiobook because it is so cost prohibitive still, because it's still going to be, expensive to have it done. I have seen people give away first 3 chapters. I've done that myself as a lead magnet to get them to listen. If you had something really, really short and you were doing it as a way to get people to sign up for your newsletter, give them that audio that's a short prequel, and then get them to come in and get the book, that might be something that is effective, but I have not seen it be extremely effective yet, because a lot of the time they want it to be in the same platform that they would listen to the rest of the books on. And so if they're an Audible listener and they have to listen to this on, Dropbox, or they have to listen to it on a different app, they may not then remember to go to Audible and go get the next book, unless it's really, really hooky. So I wouldn't be something that I would say don't do it. It's just something I would say I haven't had enough testing of that to see if it's super effective.
Continuing with the trends and delivering cheap stuff or lower cost stuff, have you seen any authors begin to leverage some of the pay as you go platforms like Patreon? I know a lot of podcasts do Patreon podcasts that are only to subscribers. Is that a method you've seen authors begin to use as a way to deliver books on more of a subscription basis?
Well, I do have a Patreon as an author. I also have it as a podcaster. For our podcast, we do use the Patreon income to fund exclusive audiobooks for them. And that has been something that is beneficial. But again, the cost of that audiobook brings the income, the ROI is not fantastic on that, but it is a way to continue to have loyal subscribers and who then bring more people in. So it is something that you definitely can do. If you put it up on Patreon, you cannot then turn around and publish it exclusively on ACX. You can still publish it, but it can't be exclusive. So just keep that in mind. I have shared for my patrons first couple of chapters of an audiobook for them, but I don't put it fully up for them because they aren't paying enough to make it worth that usually, unless you put it at a really high, you put it at a higher tier.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate those questions. The last thing I had with respect to trends, audiobooks are just people reading the book, and obviously they're performing dialogue and they're doing that type of stuff. Have you seen trends? I always go back to Lee Child always had this comment that he said he was hoping that the self-published KDP world would innovate books. And I listened to a talk about a year or two ago, and he's very disappointed in how ebooks and books in general have not been innovated now that we've opened up the door to everyone being able to publish. It's still just a book. Have you seen any trends in audiobooks, specifically with respect to the fact that podcasts and audio dramas have become more popular? We've even seen podcasts be optioned into, like, Lorp has a show. Aaron Mackey has a show. Homecoming was picked up, I think, by Showtime. A bunch of podcasts have been turned into media platform, a media that's different than just the audio. Have you seen people try to take audiobooks away from being just a book that is read by somebody and be more into more of like a script or something that's more performative?
Yes, absolutely. I have a full cast audio that will be coming out this summer, and I actually took my script, my book, and turned it into a script so that it is done in full cast duet style. The problem with it is that it is cost prohibitive. So that is the biggest thing that stops people from being really innovative, is that, you know, it's super expensive to do a full cast production, to do things with sound effects. They're hit or miss. There are some productions that have been done with sound effects. You do see audio dramas that are on Audible that start there and then get wide distribution on all the platforms. And I think one of the things to remember is that innovation is so wonderful, and it's this wonderful experience you're creating for your listener. And that's why when I do all of my books, they are all produced in duet style, which makes it a performance, not someone reading. I prefer that, but I pay more because I do prefer that, because the editing is more time consuming. And so the editing costs more. And so that's important to keep in mind, but it is important for me to make my productions an experience.
Is there any concern coming forward? I know with Photoshop, I think Adobe is doing some initial AI work where they scan the voice of a person, let's say over 100,000 words or 10,000 words, and then they're able to adapt the voice to, you know, read an entire text, and it's almost seamless. Is that some kind of technical innovation that we're going to see bringing the price down in the future, or do you see anything else out there that might help to bring that price down?
I don't think it's going to bring the price down, but I think it is going to, if it does catch on, it's going to damage the performances that you're going to get from audio. I think you'll see publishers take that on before you see indie authors producing their own. Take that in, because the publishers aren't going to want to pay money to have books done. They're going to want to do it as cheaply as they can. I know that Kiss, I think, is a platform that is now starting to offer, will produce your audio for you, but will use AI to do it. And there are some authors who are very interested in it, and then there are others who are very much like, I'm sorry, no, because you're putting voice actors out of work. So I think that there's going to be more talk about it. I don't know if we're going to see it take over or not. I hope not, as a listener, because regardless of the, you know, technology, you're not going to be able to get the nuanced performances that you get from these actors who, I mean, they make you, you know, they give you an entire performance. Especially now, that's how audio has changed. It's in the last 10 years, you've seen it go from someone reading you the book to someone acting it out for you. So I'm hopeful that it doesn't really take on a lot of weight, but we'll see. I don't know if it's going to change audiobook prices. In my opinion, it was not going to, because they're going to want to produce it for cheaper and make more money. So, you know, they're going to want to keep that price the same because there's demand for it still. People haven't stopped buying audiobooks at the prices they're at.
Have they seen the younger audience? You said that more younger people are starting to do audiobooks. I know with, like, for myself, I'm a huge podcast consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Do they see some of the pull on the pricing coming from the fact that people who enjoy podcasts get it for free?
I think that podcast listeners versus audiobook listeners vary somewhat, because an audiobook listener knows that they're, unless it's a short one, you know, they know that they're paying for a long experience. But I think also you see the credit-based um, model that Audible has had for so long. People buy the credits and then they don't really realize that they're paying for the book because they've already bought the credits. So a lot of people, you know, they wait for their monthly credit to get their book. They don't just go out and buy it a la carte. And I think with podcasts being what they are, I mean, I am a podcaster as well, and it's a different kind of content most of the time that you're getting, because it's more of a conversation than, but I mean, I have listened to full cast things as well that are fiction, but I think there's still the majority of podcasts that I listen to personally are going to be more informational or conversational interview style podcasts. But I think that you're going to see a shift with listeners as far as the length of the book that they want, and the price is already adjusted there because you are experiencing Audible saying, well, this book is only 2.5 hours, so we're only charging $3.49 or $4.99 for this book. So I haven't seen a pushback on it, and I do have a couple of novellas that are really good sellers because people like to just buy it because they're like, well, it's less than a cup of coffee, I'll buy it.
Cool. There was just a clarifying question. One of our members, Roland, asked, could you clarify what the duet style means with respect to your audiobook?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the common types of narration that you're going to see, there's solo narration, which is obviously just one narrator doing all of it. And then there is dual narration, which is just in romance terms. We have our hero and our heroine, and you have 2 points of view in the book. So when we have our heroine's point of view, we have a female narrator. When we have a hero's point of view, we have the male narrator. During dual narration, the female will do all the male voices when the hero's talking or when she encounters any male characters. When the hero is in his point of view, he'll do the same for female characters. So you'll have a man doing a woman's voice, you'll have a woman doing man's voice, and they do their own chapters exclusively. When you do duet narration, what you have is two actors who are consistently performing their own character. The female will narrate her entire point of view with the exception of male dialogue. The male narrator will record the male dialogue. The editor will put it together like a puzzle, which is why the editing takes longer. And then the same thing happens for the male point of view. And the editor will put in the female dialogue. So it takes more prep. It takes more, sorry, my screen went dark. It takes more prep. It takes more time for editing, but the experience is very, very different. And, if you're not opposed to romance, you can go to Audible and you can go to my website. My website is kimloraineauthor.com. You can look at my audiobooks and listen to samples. Almost all of them are duet narration. So you can hear what that sounds like versus dual. It's a personal preference thing, but I also find it to be, it's pretty innovative still. And people seek out my audiobooks because they are duet. And they message me and tell me, thank you for doing it in duet because I love duet so much. And so, yeah, you'll see a lot of things that are done in full cast, and it's similar to that, except when you do duet, you just have the two narrators versus, 3 or 4 or 5.
All right, we're right about an hour, and I want to really respect your time. Does anybody have any other questions? Feel free to toss them into the chat. Kim, thank you so much for your time today. It was very, very interesting. Great presentation, and thank you for answering so many of our silly questions here towards the end.
Oh, they weren't silly. They're good. Good questions.
No, we appreciate it all. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.